welcome back from that. Thank you so much, Dr. James Komolafe, for constantly giving us those mental health tips. They are wonderful. Please keep them coming because sometimes when you read our papers and you follow the news, you sometimes really need the mental health tips to get you by. But we're moving on now to discuss the World
Okay. So
Telecommunication Day.
today is the World Telecommunication Day, and then when we say World Telecommunication Day, what exactly are we talking about? We're talking about what? Accessibility of connection to people. We're talking about how telecommunication can enhance lives, how telecommunications, especially to the least developed countries, can develop our infrastructure, our health, our medical, and so many more ideas, around World Telecommunication Day. But discussing all of this today is our guest who will be joining us via Skype to celebrate Telecommunication and Information Society Day. Our guest this morning is Mr. Tony IZUAGBE. He's the President, Association of Telecommunications Company of Nigeria. Good morning, Mr. Tony. Can you hear us?
Hi, good morning. IZUAGBE is my middle name. The surname is Amakwere. I can hear you. Good morning. And it's a pleasure being here.
It's a
Good.
pleasure to have you as well.
Okay, good. So let's start with the first basic question. Why are we celebrating today when we're talking about World Telecommunication and Information Society Day? Why is it important? And then how do we as Nigerians need, I think we fall into among the least developing countries, so the
LDC.
LCD.
LDC.
LDC. We fall into the LDCs,
Please.
right? So how can we use technology to, advance our nation?
Well, we are using technology right now. I mean, I'm
I
here
guess so,
in
right?
my place I'm in Lagos and talking to you right there in Abuja. So you can imagine how technology has helped even this medium. So it's for the ITU and everybody concerned. Communication is actually a fundamental human right. We have the right to have a roof over our head. We have the right to have food on our table, and we also have the right to communicate. So it's important that we all find more means to communicate with each other. And technology is one of the greatest enabler, and it has a great multiplying effect. So the importance of technology and communication can never be overestimated.
Right. And we keep talking about the untapped possibilities and resources in that sector, especially in Nigeria, where there are several people who are still not in that dragnet, being technologically savvy enough. How can we close that dragnet and tap into the many potentials in the sector?
Well, the biggest opportunity Nigeria has is our manpower. I mean, our youth are very, very active and very, very savvy communication wise. All over the country, once they have the opportunity to have access to these technologies, they do astronomical things. We have Nigerian companies, especially in the fintech sector, doing great things. So it's very critical for us as a country where we know how much communication has contributed to our GDP as a nation. And so in order to tap it, it's the biggest challenge we have is actually spread. Now, communication is actually growing leaps and bounds since the liberalization of the sector in 2001. And we have actually gained tremendous strides as a country. But the biggest challenge, like is said, is our semi-rural and rural communities. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so they need more access to these technologies. The good thing is that there are a lot of funds that are actually going out to um, serve these needs, but further investment and development is actually required to actually propagate communication around the whole country.
I'm glad you talked about, the semi-developed and rural areas. Most average
Semi-rural and
Nigerians
rural.
do have phones, but I don't even think as Nigerians we utilize it to its fullest potentials. We're now looking at 5G. We started with 2G,
Exactly.
3G, 5. Now we're on the 5G bandwidth, and we're still looking at people in rural areas who don't have access to any Gs at all. Then I remember that
Yes.
when last year when we had the Naira redesign policy, we saw some of the things and the ways that technology could be used in banking, in making, having transactions, business transactions. Also, we saw the hindrances faced during this. So when we put all these things together, how can we ensure, what will be the challenges that we're having as a country to ensure that we get technology to that, what we call them, unbanked sector in the rural area, amongst other things that we can do with technology?
So the biggest challenge we have is actually the infrastructure that's required to drive all these technologies. Okay,
Okay.
so the problem we have, is that technology is continuously advancing, and if you have aging infrastructure, or in some cases no infrastructure at all, you can't take advantage of those new advances in technology. Even if we do, if for example you mentioned 5G, it's very few areas, even within even the what do you call the cosmopolitan areas. There's even few areas, even within, let's say, for example, Abuja or Lagos. Very few areas can actually take advantage of the 5G technology, because it actually requires a lot of more what we call base station sites, and more fiber infrastructure, talk less of the rural areas. So the biggest challenge is that there is what we call a push and pull effect. Okay, so rural areas are not very attractive for commercial ventures, because of the revenues you might generate from those areas. So you
Okay.
still need government to either incentivize people to go into those areas to provide those services, or subsidize it in some way, or put some grants in some other areas. The good thing is that we already have those kind of what I call maybe vehicles. For example, there's a subsidiary of the NCC called the USPF Fund, which is actually charged with providing funding for ventures into rural areas, what they call underserved and unserved areas. Okay, those funds are available, but just more needs to be deployed. A more coordinated effort needs to be had. I know there's a study already that has been done to know, the density of those areas. It's just work in progress. It's just something that we just have to keep on doing.
Okay. Sometimes we look at the telecommunications industry in Nigeria, and all we see are sharks. I mean, we pay so much in data, and I read an article where if you compare what Nigeria pays in data and communication, I mean, voice calls, it's more expensive than other African countries, for instance. Do you agree, first of all, and how can we get these costs lower, so that more people can be, like you said, can be part of this wonderful innovation?
Okay, well, I will not totally agree, because, for example, I know South Africa is more expensive data-wise than us, and they're more advanced in the infrastructure than ours. But the biggest challenge why we still have this pricing challenges is simply the fact that you have to invest a lot to reap those benefits. So the infrastructure deficit is still the challenge. All the operators you see now they're not yet competing on services. People are infrastructure is still a, how do I put it, a divider. Okay, so you see some of the operators, their spread is what is differentiating them from others. In other climes, it's actually your service that differentiates you. So if, for example, I have a bigger spread, I have advantage over somebody who has a lesser spread. But in other climes, spread is not even the issue, because infrastructure wise, everywhere is covered. So the more we invest in infrastructure, the more infrastructure gets around the whole country. That's when we can start to see a price reduction, because right now people are still competing on infrastructure. Nobody is competing on services. So I mean, you should be able to, for example, when you say voice calls, there are countries where voice is actually free. It's actually bundled with your data. But we cannot even get to that stage in Nigeria because the infrastructure that is required is still lagging far behind even the market demand. We are a growing population, don't forget. Um, and we are still playing catch up, catch up, catch up. So we need more investment in infrastructure. We need more government enabling support to provide infrastructure around the whole country. We need more attractive regulation to allow investors to invest in those areas. Because if the regulation and tax policies are not conducive, nobody's going to invest. So that's where we have the challenge. So once we have the country totally covered, infrastructure wise, then you can start to see people competing on services. And once we are competing on services, trust me, I mean, if my voice call is cheaper than yours, I will get more market share. But so
Absolutely.
that is where we need to get to.
Let's talk about cybersecurity in the telecommunication industry, especially when you're talking about individual privacy. I know that there are once or twice I go on search engines, and then because I've searched for a particular thing, I get to see advertisements about those that keep popping up on other social media platforms. There's some kind of interconnectivity with it, which I don't really understand because I'm not a technology person like you are, you know. But people worry about their privacy, about their you know, preserving their information. Then we also know that there's a cloud. A friend actually asked me one day, like, I said, just delete the message. She said she was so worried. When you delete messages, where do they go? Don't they go somewhere? Can't people trace it? We've actually even seen in WhatsApp now where when you maybe put a message on a platform or on a group, you delete it. People can retrieve what you've deleted and then actually read about it. So what's the space of cybersecurity in the information society?
Okay, so what you are talking about are two different things. Okay, cybersecurity, what you are talking about is actually your privacy of your data. Okay, the challenge is that most of these sites and things we subscribe to, all right, there's always a fine print. So when you subscribe to any service, be it WhatsApp, be it whatever, there are fine prints where they say you allow them to collect your data. Okay, so it's something beyond what we can even handle. So it's not a security issue. It's a privacy issue. Now
Okay.
globally, there are already some policies that are being put in place to try and see how that space can be regulated. Okay, for example, I know Facebook has been pressured to put a clause whereby I can permanently delete my account and delete all my data. So
Very
these
Okay.
are global issues, and the more we participate in that discussion, the more we can also lend our voices to those things. So on cybersecurity, we're talking more about hacking, phishing, people spoofing your emails, things like that. That's more cybersecurity related. When you talk about things about your data being okay, for example, the example you mentioned where you browse a certain website and then you just go somewhere else and you see similar things, and all that. So that is actually a privacy issue. What usually causes that is that there's this what is called cookies on your browser. So once you
Okay.
allow cookies on your browser, it allows third-party sites to collect data from you. So I think what we need to do, maybe more education, more awareness as regards to how to safeguard your privacy online. For example, you can turn off cookies. You can right now sites have been compelled to let users know that they are collecting cookies. So you can actually allow cookies to be collected or not. So cookies are like digital trails. So if you click on something and you allow cookies on your browser or on the site, it collects that and stores it somewhere, and it shares it across different platforms. And there's a secondary market for your data. Okay, this is just even beyond even what we are managing here locally. These are so. Don't forget, the internet is a global
It's a global
platform, and you
village.
are.
I think that's the word you
Yeah,
like to use.
exactly.
A global village.
Yeah, it's a global platform. So once you're on the internet, you are in the world, so to speak. Okay, so how you navigate that world out there is a personal thing. So one of the tricks is that you disallow cookies, you don't allow cookies, and then also as much as you can. I know it's the terms and conditions very long, and people don't tend to read it. You just click accept, accept, accept. But as much as you can, if you could do some little research, find out what to accept, what not to accept, it can help you safeguard your data online.
Okay, so let's get back to the least developed countries and how we can
Exactly.
help in that. Is Nigeria a giant when it comes to the telecommunication sector? And are we can we help our fellow least um, developing countries at all? And what is the global agenda that would give this intervention?
Well, the funny thing about Nigeria is that we are a giant as well as having challenges. So some of the challenges that these least developed countries have, we also have them, maybe not to the same degree. One of the key challenges also we forget is that because I recently checked out a study on some of these areas, these countries. Education is also a factor. All right. So how literate you are determines how well you can access some of these technologies. You'll be surprised that there is still a good number of communities that rely solely on your type of media, basically TV and radio. And the reason being is because they are not literate. So there is also a push to see how, for example, we can make some of this content that's online in languages um, um, that those communities have. For example, if you have content in Hausa, content in Igbo, content in Yoruba that's online, so that if even if I'm not that literate, I can actually still communicate via this platform. So these are some of the areas that are being looked into. The challenge also is that, like I said, the infrastructure lack of is still a problem. So there are a lot of grants and aids that are coming from advanced countries to help these kind of countries. Then another thing is that we are, the backbone infrastructure that connects all these countries also part of the challenge. Now, the sad thing is that communication and your transport and your road network are almost the same. So all communication is actually by the coast. So all the coastal cities are well connected. Once you move hinterland, you now find challenges. So, how do we take this capacity that we have at the coastal areas into the hinterland and into all the other areas? These are the challenges that are being addressed, and these are things that we can work together. I know that there are plans to link, despite the fact that we have submarine cables linking all the African countries. There are also plans to have fiber optic cables that link countries around the Sahel and around the middle part of Africa and things like that. So these are measures that are already being undertaken, and hopefully we'll see how this will help in moving this challenge of this developing least developed countries,
Okay, good. Mr. Tony, we
LDCs.
have a special report on this to celebrate this day, so we'll just play it, and then after that, we'll continue the conversation.
All right.
With Nigeria joining the Fourth Industrial Revolution train, commemorating the World Telecommunications and Information Society Day is an opportunity to recognize the incredible advancement and innovations in the telecom sector and its significance in fostering global connectivity, economic growth and social development. Special Assistant to the President on Digital and New Media, Mr. Tolu Ogunlesi, speaking to ASO Radio and Television on Emerging Technologies, says the blockchain initiative is among the federal government's long list of implementation intervention policies. He said government has provided guidelines for financial institutions in the country.
Blockchain, is one of the newest technologies defining the world today, and a lot of financial services, government services, a lot of stuff is built on the blockchain. And so, it's about, I spoke earlier about keeping up with emerging technologies. You cannot in the 21st century at this time be a government or a country that does not make plans for young people, for businesses to take advantage of the blockchain. And so this is just a step. This is the first step, the policy, and this policy is supposed to guide government MDAs who are in the business of regulating financial services and all that, to be able to harmonize their regulations, and to also make sure that the decisions that are being made are decisions that will support technology and not hinder it, not be obstacles.
Declared by United Nations General Assembly, 17th of May annually marks the anniversary of the signing of the first International Telegraph Convention and the creation of the International Communication Union, ITU.
We highlight the power of technology to advance sustainable development in least developed countries. The digital revolution is a defining force of our era. The opportunities are tremendous, from transforming education and healthcare to accelerating climate action and the achievement of all the Sustainable Development Goals.
The declaration became imperative to address a major connectivity challenge for underdeveloped and developing nations like Nigeria.
If you even delve into the social media aspect, where people hold their businesses online now, buying and selling happens without even you walking into a physical shop.
You sometimes cannot browse. You have to go climb a certain mountain or stand very close to some kind of tree on elevated plane, and for that we would need improvement on that. In the urban areas, yes, internet connectivity is relatively strong and fine, but in rural areas we need better penetration. It hasn't penetrated so well into rural areas.
Well, it is very, very conspicuous that this government has really done much when it comes to the issue of telecommunication and digital economy, most especially under the Honorable Minister Isa Aliu Pantami.
Over time, the connectivity challenge has become more complex and demanding. Achieving meaningful connectivity is not feasible, as the possibility to enjoy a safe, satisfying, productive, and affordable online experience becomes increasingly skillful while leveraging on the internet for value creation. The theme for the 2023 World Telecommunications and Information Society Day, which is empowering the least developed countries, LDCs, through information and communication technologies, is to spotlight and focus on these countries for efficient universal connectivity and foster a prospective LDCs. Elizabeth Kasham, ASO Television News.
Okay, Mr. Tony, you still with us?
I am.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, great. So before we let you go, you've watched our special report, and we all know we're still a least developing country. Nigeria is trying with our Ministry of Creativity, what's it called? Creative and Digital. What's it? Oh my God, it skipped my head.
Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy.
Awesome, that's it. And we know we have that. Oh my God. So we already know we have that existent. How can we use technology to empower especially the teeming youths of Nigerians who are unemployed? We are talking about being the least developed countries. We're trying to get out of it. And of course, if you look at the statistics and the figure, I think for 2022, the figures are gradually decreasing as at 2022. So we're getting more people involved. But unemployment is an issue in Nigeria, and we have, of course, a more youthful population. So just before we let you go, how can we use technology to create jobs for Nigerians?
Well, the beautiful thing about technology, and especially IT skills, are things that you can actually learn even either of you there could pick up a programming language and start to teach yourself. And a lot of Nigerians youth do that. I actually have staff of mine a contract staff actually, who works for me and also works for a company in the US. And
Okay.
the reason why he's able to do that is because he's online. So the biggest opportunity we have is IT skills and development of IT skills. Several government agencies are already doing that. I know there's a program called the Hackathon, whereby youths compete and win prizes on
Exactly.
their software development skills. And so the software development space is the biggest opportunity for teaming youth. Unfortunately, some of our youth also use these things to do other nefarious
419
activities.
Yahoo Yahoo, yes.
Not even forward that, yeah, there are all sorts. I have a cousin of mine who were trying to win off this. I don't know what they do with the mobile phones now. They have a way of doing some funny things on the mobile phone. But the thing is that a lot of our youth have that opportunity. There are companies like there's a company that I know that actually trains youth to do software skills, and they actually work for blue chip companies in the US from here in Nigeria. The only reason why they're able to do that is because an internet infrastructure, that they can utilize, so they can house them in a building and work online for companies abroad. Now, these are only available in some urban areas, maybe Lagos, maybe Abuja. But the dream is for this to be available all around the country. So you can imagine if my village, for example, I'm from Edo State, Auchi area to be exact, and then I could set up an IT firm there where I can now hire youths in my community, train them in IT skills, and they can work for companies abroad. It's being done all over the world. India is one of their biggest exports, okay,
Exactly.
whereby they have this, for example, they have call center business whereby they handle call center operations for companies globally. And the only reason why they're able to do that is because they have the infrastructure in those areas. The internet connection there is spot on. It doesn't blink. It doesn't break.
Exactly.
And they have that facility. So if I have that in my village, hey, why would I need to be in Lagos? I go home, I set up an institution, employ my youth, and then they'll be engaged. So those are the opportunities that we have for our teaming youth. And I think the more the infrastructure goes around the country and the more we are aware of the value of this infrastructure, value of communication, and what we can do with it, which a day like this brings to bear, the more we can take advantage of these opportunities.
Okay, so you have mentioned a very good part where there's the potential of getting that resource and exporting our own intellect right here. However, the biggest conversation when it comes to telecommunication and the innovations that come with it is artificial intelligence. Is it indeed threatening the jobs? Would it still be
Oh,
viable
yeah.
today if you have these hubs, rather IT hubs, where you train young people with
AI, intelligence.
artificial intelligence,
Yes.
rather, making so much waves? Would it still be relevant?
Well, the mistake people make is to think that artificial intelligence actually replaces the human being. It actually just accelerates what you are able to do. So I give an example. Before, if I was going to go from Lagos to Ibadan, in those days I would have to walk or climb a donkey. After a while, you'll be able to use a horse. Later on, we now had bicycles, we now have cars, now we now have trains. So the activity of me going from Lagos to Ibadan hasn't changed. What happens is that I can now do it at a better speed, maybe faster, more convenient, and more accessible. So that's what AI does for you. All right, AI is an enabler and it has a multiplier effect. So the human factor is still required in some of these skills. Now there are some requirements that will change because of the nature of AI, all right, or of technology basically, and it's the same world over. I mean, before you had cars, you might have need to have somebody who will be able to manage your cattle or your horse or something. Now you have mechanics. So technology shouldn't be we should not be it shouldn't be viewed as something that's like a barrier, but actually it just changes the dynamics of the environment, and for it to be able to do more things. And that's just what it's all about. AI doesn't, it's not going to replace anything. It's not going to replace you, for example. It might even make this communication
I've seen cars drive themselves.
even more.
I'm happy it won't replace us. But we want to thank you so much,
But there's
Mr. Tony.
some, there's some fears as regards to the fact that you could have digital presenters, for example. Okay, which are AI.
We don't want that to happen. We'll be out of a job. But thank you so much, Tony IZUAGBE, for being our guest on ASO Morning. Tony IZUAGBE, he's the President, Association of Telecommunication Companies of Nigeria. Many thanks for being on ASO Morning.
Thank you very much.
Great. And then up next is Investment Plus, and after that...
We are a nation blessed with people of diverse cultures, religions, languages, and opinions. It is ironic that we are now being ripped apart by our greatest strength, our diversity. We have allowed intolerance, insensitivity, bigotry, and nepotism to blind our vision of the greatness we can achieve working together as one. We may not have the same culture, nor religion, nor language, but we all belong to the same nation by the divine will of God. We did not choose to be Nigerians. Nigeria chose us. This nation is our divine heritage, and if we open our eyes, we would realize that what divides us pales in comparison to what unites us. And by the comparison and conciliation of our differences, we will grow until our differences disappear. Our unity cannot be willed by mere declarations, nor do we get unity by ignoring the questions that beg for answers. We must celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our unity. Our strength is not in our numbers, but in our unity, because even the weak become strong when united. Nigeria unite.
This message is brought to you by Abuja Broadcasting Corporation, owners and operators of ASO Radio 93.5 FM Abuja, ASO Television DSTV Channel 392, Star Times Terrestrial Channel 127, Free TV Channel 507, People's TV Channel 285, and UHF Channel 38.